to our virtualization masterclass. Now, we looked at cloud computing in our previous session, and again, hopefully in our Green IT lecture, you had a bit more information about what virtualization is. So if I can just discuss with you what we're going to be looking at in this particular lecture. We're going to look at what is virtualization, the drivers behind virtualization, the benefits of virtualization, and the different technologies and applications that we can use. Now, virtualization can be defined as access to a single underlying piece of hardware which is coordinated so that multiple guest operating systems can share that single piece of hardware with no guest operating system being aware that is actually sharing anything at all. So what does this really mean? Well, in the past, so imagine I'm a company which has 5 servers. So I would have 5 physical servers. So that's my first server over here. That's my second server over there. My third server. My fourth server. Seems running out of space. Put my 5th server on the top. Okay. So let's look at traditionally, what are the issues which we have when you're running servers within our own organization? Well, we have the issue of energy. So that could be both heating and cooling. We have the issue of administration, which we have to look at. The issue of licensing. The issue of either underutilizing or overutilizing capacity. So we can define the scalability. So let's try and take a look at how virtualization can help solve these different areas. But first of all, virtualization is not a new technology. So very often when you see scenes in the cinema where people are trying to access a mainframe using one of the VDU screens, that would be more often than not an example of virtualization. And virtualization is nothing new. It's been around for quite a long time. But it has taken off in the last 2 to 3 years, and again has become quite common. And again, very often people tend to mistake virtualization with cloud computing. Now, virtualization makes cloud computing possible, right? Virtualization is the technology behind cloud computing, but virtualization is not cloud computing. And the only part of virtualization that has some sort of similarity with regards to cloud computing is when we're trying to use infrastructure as a service, where the different services that you're benefiting from, the servers that you'll be utilizing are virtualized servers. But again, it's very important to be able to distinguish between cloud computing and virtualization. They're not the same thing. So what are the different drivers of virtualization? Well, first of all, hardware is underutilized. Okay, very often many machines are running only at about 10 to 15% of their capacity. We are generating a huge amount of data, and data centers are running out of space. Now, I think at the last count we had exabytes of data, new data being created on a daily basis. Energy costs have gone through the roof, right? Again, you have the idea of redundancy, you have the idea of power failures. What will you do if your servers go down? And system admin costs are also mounting. So those are primarily the drivers behind virtualization. So again, it's the same challenges that we face within our organization, which is the reason why we look at virtualizing our servers. So again, if you take a look at, if this is the issues that we have, so again, this is within our organization. So what virtualization does is we are able to move this outside. So the issues of energy administration, licensing, and scalability are affecting only a single machine. So by virtualizing all of these machines onto one single physical server, which is running some sort of virtualizing software, again you'll see the different types afterwards. So this is the virtualized. So this is now a virtual operating system. It's run. This is again a virtual operating system. There's a virtual operating system. So virtual operating system is a virtual operating system. So again, as far as these operating systems are concerned, as far as they are from a hardware and software point of view, they still see themselves having access to the same physical infrastructure. So first of all, the benefits are there are fewer machines, so there's lower hardware costs. So again, it's the idea of one application, one server, which you used to see before. So again, traditionally it would be one mail server, one database server, one backup server. Again, by having virtualization, we're able to consolidate all of these servers into one single physical machine. We have increased IT operation flexibility, again, periods of peak demand, and through the different virtualizing technologies, again, links to that you can find in this masterclass, is that you're able to switch on and switch off virtualized servers as and when required. You have failover and load balancing. Also, you have reduced IT operation costs. So rather than looking after 5 different servers, you're looking at one physical server. There's no production outage. There's lower energy costs because again, instead of 5 servers, you just have one physical server. So first of all, one of the most common ones was client virtualization. Again, it's about application packaging, which isolates application from the underlying operating system. We also have examples of application streaming, where application is stored on the server and downloaded on the fly. It's ideal where sort of connection is connectivity is constant, and hardware emulation, which is basically used for client and server virtualization. So in this one, we have this idea of containers, right? So you have the virtualized server, you've got the application software, the system software, the system libraries, all of them running on top of the operating system container and the host operating system, which in turn is running on the hardware and the network. Now, what are the advantages? Well, first it's efficient. There's reduction in license for guest operating systems. The disadvantages are the containers can only offer the same OS as the host operating system. The containers are limited to drivers in the base operating system. The containers are dependent on the stability of the base operating system. The examples are Sun Solaris, Virtuoso, and OpenZ. Hardware emulation is where we have seen an increase in people using virtualization technologies. And hardware emulation is effectively what I described to you before, where you have a physical server which is running one or more virtualized servers on top of it. So you have the application, the operating system. Again, the virtualized server, it sees its own native hard drive, its own network card, which in reality is a virtualized hardware, virtualized network card. But as far as the virtualized operating system is concerned, it sees them as a single, it belongs to the machine itself. So that is an example of hardware emulation. So the advantages are there's no modification of the operating systems required. It supports multiple and dissimilar operating systems. And again, for example, at our university, when we teach a module in network security, we have guest operating systems. We have Ubuntu operating system, we have a Windows 2003 server, a Windows 7 server, all of them running on a host operating system. So that's again where you see the benefits of hardware emulation. So again, it supports multiple dissimilar operating systems. Now again, this in a production environment could be beneficial where companies have to support legacy operating systems while the company's own desktop client software may have moved on to newer versions. Right, so disadvantages, it imposes a performance penalty, right? So because at the end of the day, the software is running the operating system, it's running the virtualized software on top of that as well. And sometimes there's the issue of limited device driver availability, because again, you would not be using virtualization for running things which require very powerful CPU utilization, memory, network utilization. So again, you may not want to do it for things like gaming, rendering. You might want to do that on a single machine itself. Examples of these are VM Server and Microsoft Virtual Server. You also had Sun now, Oracle, Jumpbox. So again, these are different sort of software you can download to try and play around with the different issues of virtualization. Moving towards the commercial and at the higher end of virtualization, we have this idea of para-virtualization, which in effect you also call it bare-bone virtualization, where the hardware that you buy does not have an operating system running on it. So with technology like ESXi server from VMware, with Windows Server, you basically run the bare bone virtualization software on top of the hardware itself. Then you're able to install operating systems on top of that. First, the benefits that you get is very low overhead because these hypervisors use very less memory. So this is where you tend to get benefits of virtualization technologies.